From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Tensions in the upper legislative chamber during debate on ways and means advances as both Senate and House of Representatives passed 21.8 trillion naira 2023 budget, raises estimates by 1.3 trillion naira. The President urges armed forces and other security agencies involved in support services towards the 2023 general elections to remain apolitical and professional. An uneasy calm for Nigerians in Benoni area of East Johannesburg, South Africa, following a series of attacks on them by a group of local taxi operators.
On business news tonight, Senate asks the central bank to extend its deadline of withdrawal of old naira notes in circulation from January the 31st to June the 30th next year.
On sports news tonight, the Interim Management Committee conclude draws for the 2022-2023 NPFL Abridged League in Abuja, announces a 100 million naira prize money for the league winners in May next year.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, House of Representatives condemns the killing of lawyer Bolanle Rahim by a police officer in Lagos. Inspector General of Police recommends suspension of suspect in line with police disciplinary procedure.
And in international news from London, the United States is considering imposing new COVID restrictions on Chinese arrivals after Beijing announced it would reopen its borders next month.
We start from the National Assembly, which today passed the 2023 appropriation bill, pegging it at 21.83 trillion naira. This shows an increase of 1.32 trillion naira from the 20.51 trillion naira proposed by President Muhammadu Buhari. Of the sum, 6.6 trillion naira is for debt servicing, while 8.3 trillion naira will be utilized for recurrent expenditure and 5.9 trillion naira for capital expenditure. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
And the gruesome murder of
Federal lawmakers cut short their Christmas break to attend to critical pieces of legislation, one of which is the 2023 appropriation bill. But first, lawmakers attend to the request for extension of the implementation of the 2022 budget, which is eventually extended from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023. The purpose for the extension is to ensure the implementation of key capital projects in the Act, which have not been funded as at this time. Both chambers then passed the 2022 supplementary budget of 819.5 billion naira, as requested by President Muhammadu Buhari.
The Appropriation Committee, having considered the detailed provisions of the bill, the contribution of the subcommittee, and general impact it makes in ameliorating the havoc caused by flood across the country.
Attention eventually shifts to the 2023 appropriation bill, which was deferred last week over what the Senate President described as problems discovered in it. As the 9th National Assembly passes its final appropriation bill, hopeful of maintaining the January to December budget cycle, the Senate President has a word for the executive arm.
I want to take this opportunity to urge the executive arm of government to implement the 2022 Appropriation Act. We have also passed the supplementary budget for 2022. We expect total implementation, no selective implementation.
The 2023 budget of 21.83 trillion naira passed by the National Assembly shows an increase of 1.32 trillion naira from the 20.51 trillion naira budget proposal of President Muhammadu Buhari in October this year. The recurrent expenditure is maintained at approximately 8.27 trillion naira. Capital expenditure increases from 5.35 to 5.9 trillion naira, while the debt servicing also increased from 6.31 to 6.6 trillion naira. Some key capital allocations include the Federal Ministry of Defense, 285 billion naira, Health, 134.9 billion naira, Power, 195.5 billion naira, and the Federal Ministry of Education, 153.7 billion naira. The House of Representatives had helped to resolve the 9-month strike by university lecturers earlier this year by making commitments to improve their welfare packages and make available revitalization funds to improve the infrastructure and operations of federal universities. The Tertiary Institutions Revitalization Fund of 300 billion naira and the 170 billion naira for salary renegotiation have been captured in the 2023 appropriation bill. 10.2 billion naira has also been provided for the university's pension, including arrears. President Muhammadu Buhari has 3 days to sign the 2023 budget to maintain the January 1st to December 31st budget cycle reintroduced by this 9th Assembly. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, there were tense moments in the Senate today over the president's request for the upper chamber to approve 22.7 trillion naira collected by the federal government from the central bank. President Buhari had written to the Senate for the approval of restructuring of ways and means advances given to the federal government by the CBN within the last 10 years for emergency funding of delayed receipt of fiscal deficit. Some lawmakers opposed the application, arguing that the president's request is unconstitutional. Our correspondent Linda Kibre has more.
Federal legislators take a day from their annual Christmas and New Year holiday to attend to some crucial legislations and functions before 2022 draws to a close. One of such legislative functions is to attend to a request from President Buhari for the approval of restructuring of 22.7 trillion naira ways and means advances given to the federal government by the Central Bank of Nigeria within the last 10 years, in addition to 1 trillion naira to be collected as fresh domestic loan. The president, in a letter read by Senate President Ahmad Lawan last Wednesday, December 21st, explains that ways and means are advances from the Central Bank of Nigeria to the federal government for emergency funding of delayed receipt of fiscal deficits. However, a federal lawmaker is averse to this request from President Buhari.
I don't know where the law comes from, where we have to spend money or restructure expenditures through ways and means.
Distinguished. Excuse me, please, just let me say something. There is nothing before the Senate now. There is nothing. Technically, the report needs to be presented and then you can raise your issue.
Mr. President, the report cannot be presented because we have no laws in the land of Nigeria that covers anything called weight.
No, why the report should be presented is for us to know what happened.
Mr. President,
Senator Apiafi is unhappy at the progression of events, and raised voices fill the air, mostly from opposition senators who are against the report.
Listen.
Efforts by the Senate President to make his colleagues back down is unsuccessful, prompting him to call for a closed-door session to resolve the matter. Nearly an hour later, the private session ends and the Senate announces its resolutions on the Ways and Means request.
That the restructuring of 22 trillion 719 billion of ways and means be stepped down for further legislative action.
The Senate President sets up a special committee to summon the Minister of Finance, the CBN Governor, and heads of other relevant agencies to provide details on approvals and expenditure made from the 22.7 trillion naira. Meanwhile, the Senate passes the Finance Bill, which proposes key reforms to specific taxation, customs, excise and fiscal laws through the amendment of several tax laws. However, a member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Onofiok Luke, raises concerns that certain amendments in the Finance Bill will not address the hardship faced by Nigerians.
The economy and the situation from globally to nationally has affected the lives of poor Nigerians. And so any action we are going to take to lay a foundation for government expenditure for 2023 should consider leveraging and then mitigating the hardship that Nigerians are facing.
Nevertheless, the House of Representatives passes the finance bill. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Outside the nation's shores, there is an uneasy calm in the Benoni area east of Johannesburg, South Africa. This is where, following a series of attacks by a group of local taxi operators who claim some Nigerians are peddling drugs there and destroying the lives of the youth. Eyewitnesses say not every Nigerian business has come under attack, but a number of people have been wounded. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia reports that Nigeria's Consul General intervened in the crisis.
The streets seem calm now, but it's been a hectic few weeks for some Nigerians in the Benoni Business District, 45 minutes from central Johannesburg. The pictures are disturbing, and a 44-year-old Nigerian has died of his injuries from assault. They saw a group of angry Nigerians besieging the Benoni police station, a situation that would have ended badly if not for the intervention of the Consul General and the police leadership.
The local community in Benoni claims that Nigerians in the some Nigerians in the community were destroying their youths, especially their girl children, with drugs and bringing them into the prostitution industry, and they were not happy. In addition, they also complained that the situation has worsened to the point whereby Nigerians are now receivers of stolen property. They send their small kids, young boys, to go steal property to come sell to them.
They just beat someone now, another Nigerian guy.
Adewale Oguntayo, whom can be heard in that eyewitness video, runs a business in the community.
Anyone that they suspect dealing with drugs, then they will attack the person and tell them that, listen, you must stop. It started with discipline, beating and assaulting and things like that. But now it was just unfortunate that Ugoshiku died in the process of the assault.
We've had no success in our effort to speak with the Benoni Taxi Association, but they sat at a situation meeting with the Nigerian Consul General, the police, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, and some leaders of the Nigerian community.
During the meeting, the leaders made commitments to end the attacks. And the meeting ended well because we decided as an outcome to establish a Benoni first community relations.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a permanent thing to meet periodically. And the objective is it will serve as a bridge to enhance and promote inter-community harmony, to end the ongoing attacks, as well as a platform for early warning and information sharing.
The next meeting of the peace grouping, called Benoni First, is the 18th of January 2023. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Consulate General has released a movement advisory to Nigerians in Benoni to stay off the streets and be security conscious while efforts continue to end the attacks. A murder case has also been opened over the death of Chinwoko Ugochukwu. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Staying with security back home, the president is cautioning security agencies engaged in various support services in the 2023 elections to remain apolitical, maintain a high sense of professionalism, and desist from behavior that would bring disrepute to the service. President Muhammadu Buhari urged the agencies to handle the distribution and monitoring of classified materials and other logistics professionally and in accordance with standard operational procedures. He was speaking at the commissioning of the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, newly acquired estate at Idu Karmo in Abuja.
I very much appreciate the efforts of the Defense Intelligence Agency towards meeting this administration's housing policy, which is set to provide housing for all Nigerians. The agency's investment in staff accommodation complements our vision of achieving improved national security. Let me reiterate, as we approach our general election in 2023, security agencies will be engaged with various support and assistance in the elections, particularly with distribution and monitoring of classified materials and other logistics. This must be done professionally and in accordance with standard operation procedures. I therefore urge you to remain apolitical and desist from behavior that could bring disrepute to the agency and our country by compromising the democratic process.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. In part two, after the break, we continue our review of sectoral performance in 2022. Tonight, we'll be looking at the presidency. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If this has joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Tensions in the upper legislative chamber during debate on ways and means advances as both Senate and House of Representatives passed 21.8 trillion naira 2023 budget, raises estimates by 1.3 trillion naira. The President urges armed forces and other security agencies involved in support services towards the 2023 general elections to remain apolitical and professional. An uneasy calm for Nigerians in the Benoni area of East Johannesburg, South Africa, following a series of attacks on them by a group of local taxi operators. The US considers imposing new COVID restrictions on Chinese arrivals after Beijing announced it would reopen its borders next month. The President is already counting down to his exit from office on May the 29th next year, coming against the backdrop of several events that shaped his administration in the outgoing year. From the search for his successor to major decisions on the economy and the nation's security, President Buhari will be remembered for some of the critical decisions he took within the year. In our review of the year 2022 tonight, our State House correspondent, Gloria Muzuke, examines the issues that shaped Nigeria's seat of power this year.
President Muhammadu Buhari began the year on a political note as he received various aspirants who apprised him of their intention to succeed him in 2023 under the All Progressives Congress. 23 aspirants, including the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, threw their hats into the ring as all eyes in the party rested on President Buhari to provide support in the selection process.
Mr. President would want a vibrant, experienced, energetic, patriotic Nigerian to take over from him. I possess all of these qualities.
As the politicking intensified, President Buhari put his ministers under the microscope and in a most assertive move asked those seeking elective positions to resign. 7 members of the cabinet subsequently resigned their positions.
The departure of some cabinet members has undoubtedly created a vacuum that should be filled.
One of the few defining moments for the administration is the ratification of the plan to defer the removal of fuel subsidy to the next administration through an 18-month extension.
We will propose an 18-month extension, and then, of course, it's up to the National Assembly to look at it and then pass the amendment as they see fit.
June 2023 is the day, but you can just say the quantum of resources that is needed to subsidize. We are talking of 3.5 trillion in 2023. By January next year, with significant production resumed by the Port Harcourt refineries, that will halt our refined petroleum imports.
On June 27, an acting Chief Justice of the Federation, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, was sworn in by the President to replace Justice Ibrahim Tanko, who retired voluntarily on health grounds.
So help me God.
The weekly Federal Executive Council meeting held for most of the period under review. It gave major presidential assents and approvals, including the Executive Order Number 10, which granted financial autonomy to the judiciary and the legislature at the state level, as well as the Electoral Amendment Bill signed by the President, among others. Undoubtedly, the signed Electoral Amendment Bill effectively marked a turning point for the electoral system and for the President, who also invested time to critically review the performance of each ministry against the backdrop of his 9-point agenda.
We also have the rating on industrial dispute management, and it was very good. We were scored summa cum laude, and you know that a lot of things are happening in that industry.
Just as the federal government pushed to address the protracted face-off with ASU, it also fought to douse lingering insecurity, particularly after the Abuja-Kaduna train incident.
The first assignment is given to the security agencies, especially the armed forces and the police, is to rescue those that are in captivity.
The infamous challenge of crude oil theft reached its peak by the last quarter of the year, as more shocking discoveries were made. When viewed through the lens of declining revenue and soaring debt profile, the need to fight it head-on became crucial.
The oil theft alone is very scary. The aversion of many taxes that are being collected is also a great concern. There are so many areas where if government is serious about it, they will be able to raise more resources, more revenue to be able to finance development.
In fulfilling one of his cardinal objectives of tackling corruption, the President approved the redesign of the nation's currency.
Not much time has been given to even educate the Nigerians, because a lot of Nigerians have no access to Android phone or phone that has internet that you can do banking. It's not every Nigerians who has access to that.
One of the highlights of the President's last term in office was the conferment of the 2022 National Honours Award on 450 notable individuals. Now, in spite of some of the achievements viewed as the high watermarks of this administration, Nigerians clearly would like to see a whole lot more traction recorded in critical areas like education, energy, and even corruption to boost the nation's economic fortunes in the months ahead. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, we spoke to a development consultant and public affairs analyst, Mr. Ezo Yekpere, and I started by asking him to assess the presidency's handling of major national issues in light of what the administration promised in 2022.
2022 has been a very troubling year for majority of Nigerians. We are not even looking at it from the angle of what exactly was promised at the beginning of the year, but the general promise of the administration. At least in this year, we had more Nigerians fall into poverty, as gleaned from the official statistics of the NBS. The insecurity continued, and it was a terrible year for human infrastructure in terms of education, the long-lasting ASU strike, as well as the thousands of qualified medical personnel, the doctors and the nurses who were leaving the country. It was also a year that we witnessed the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation not depositing a dime into the Federation account for sharing by the traitors of government.
We had incessant fuel scarcity and all kinds of challenges. A situation like I'm in my village today, where we are paying 330 naira per liter, and it's still part of the millions of barrels, the millions of liters every day that an NPC still claims subsidy on. So many more Nigerians fell into poverty. There was more hardship. There was more misery. Insecurity continued. Education had a crisis. Health had a crisis. Essentially, we are also witnessing a monetary policy crisis, issues around inflation hitting the roof, and of course, the recent monetary policy crisis engineered by the CBN and the DSS coming in. So a whole lot of challenges.
Mr. Ikwere, are you saying
Nigerians will rather wish to not to repeat in 2023? Whatever happened this year, we don't think we want to have such an experience in 2023.
Are you saying there were no developmental milestones?
Well, in terms of developmental milestones, Nigeria has expected that being the last year of the administration, I mean, less than 6 months after December, that the government will have been tidying up whatever loose ends that we are still there. We had expected more dedication in terms of cleaning out the insecurity mess. We had expected also completing a lot of projects that the administration has started. Okay, issues around the rail lines, particularly the Eastern Corridor, that nothing has been done. Issue around making electricity much more regular, having more power for the use of Nigerians. Issues around even the economy in terms of tidying up the debt situation and reducing borrowing, stabilize the economy. So a lot was expected. But unfortunately, we didn't get much positive milestones this year. A lot of what we got was a little bit negative.
When we talk about the redesign of the Naira, the new CBN's cash withdrawal limits, which are backed by the president and said to be part of ways to curb corruption, among other benefits, do you think this will have the desired effect?
No. If you look at what is happening today, we are almost at the end of the year, and we were promised that by the end of January, the old currency will cease to be legal tender, and the new ones, okay, will be everywhere. I was in the bank on the either 22nd or 23rd specifically in Owerri, and all I got was still the old notes. Indeed, I went to the bank to get some cash, but I was told that no matter whatever I've written in my checkbook, I could only get 50,000. And the 50,000 that was disbursed to me was the old notes. So how can we be planning for those old notes to be legal tender by the 30th of January, and we are still paying them out as now? In terms of even the restriction, I don't see how feasible that will be, considering that there are still a lot of places, local areas, people who are transacting in this cash business, who do not even have access to the electronic portal. And even at the bank where I went to collect money, we were there for almost 40 minutes, and they told us that their server was down, and they were having connectivity problems.
That is also
so
probably
how can
why
we really begin
the Senate is saying, a member of the Senate is saying perhaps this should be extended, a few more months to enable a lot of people, check in the old money. But then we're looking at just a few months to the exit of power. What should the presidency place as priority? Just in a few seconds, if you can.
Security is number one. He should try to stabilize the quality in terms of security. Secondly, he should also make sure he hands over through a free and fair electoral process. He should give INEC whatever it needs, including that security, because a lot of the offices are being burned, so that we'll have a credible election. And whoever becomes president after him will now start from a clean state, because there's not much he can do now, and then take the necessary steps after he has left.
We always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10, Mr. Eze Onyekwere, legal practitioner and development expert. Thanks again. about that deadline on withdrawal is still ahead on the news at 10. The Senate is asking the central bank to extend its deadline on the withdrawal of the old Naira notes in circulation from January the 31st to June the 30th, 2023. That's on Business News. Do join us again. Stories as we hand you over to Mark Bogun Yusuf, who is in Abuja. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Millicent. We return to the National Assembly, where lawmakers in the House of Representatives are condemning the killing of a lawyer, Mrs. Bolanle Rahim, by a policeman in Lagos on Christmas Day this year. The issue was raised as a matter of urgent public importance by Honorable Ibrahim Obanikoro, and lawmakers said they were disturbed by the reports of wanton killing of Nigerians by men of the Nigerian police. The House is to investigate the killing of Mrs. Rahim and another young man who was also allegedly killed recently by officers from the same police station.
Mrs. Rahim was 7 months pregnant. Mrs. Rahim was 7 months pregnant with twins. Mr. Speaker, concerned that the same incident happened by officers from the same Ajue police station, gunned down a young man by the name Gafaru Braimo, which sparked a bit of civic unrest. Mr. Speaker, worried that this type of occurrence happens often across Nigeria and that the officers usually get away with shooting and killing same innocent citizens they swore to protect. Mr. Speaker, our prayer is that we should have a 1 minute silence in honor of the 2 gun victims in my constituency in the month of December. That an immediate investigation be carried out to get justice for the 2 victims. Mr. Speaker, police officers should be banned from consuming alcohol and other hard substances that is capable of inhibiting their sense of reasoning and capability to carry out their duties judiciously.
Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has recommended the suspension of Assistant Superintendent of Police, Drambi Vandi, the officer arrested over the shooting and killing of Barrister Omobolanle Rahim, while waiting for the detailed report on the incident. A statement by the spokesperson of the Nigeria Police, Muyiwa Adib Jobi, explains that the suspension is in line with the internal disciplinary processes of the Nigeria Police. The IGP further notes that the decision is also expected to create an enabling environment for necessary legal procedures to uphold justice in the case. The police spokesperson, who was on our program Politics Today, gives more insight into the issues.
The policemen who fired Ganiyu are in Pantif, as I speak with you. They are in Panti, and the matter has been investigated. But you know, at times when we have issues like this, let me quickly say this. The family of deceased at times always slow our processes down. In the situation where some people prefer negotiation to legal actions, if they say, okay, we want settlement, amicable settlement, it's going to be unfair to that man who is the suspect now. To say, okay, you want to settle amicably, then you want to charge him, you want to dismiss him. He's going to be tantamount to job with your party. So I think people need to understand pressures at times we face. If you want to prosecute, even to the rank and files, you want to prosecute anybody, you must. It's either you dismiss the person or you suspend the person before the case is charged to court. So in his own case, the first step is he has been identified, he has been detained, investigation has been carried out, an interim report has been forwarded to us in Abuja, and we have written to Service Commission recommending that this officer, then the ASP, should be suspended so that...
In Anambra State, the governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, has been gauging the security situation in the state since the start of his administration, and he says security has improved greatly. The occasion was a special security briefing at his country home in Usofia, Agwata local government area, where he commended all the law enforcement agencies in the state for their professionalism. And staying with security, the Imo State Police Command has arrested a 34-year-old Nigerian Army deserter, Lance Corporal Wagu Chiwendu, also known as Onyami, from Ama-Uhuru Unguru community in Abombise local government area of Imo State, while parading the suspect at the command headquarters in Owerri. The command spokesperson, Mike Abatam, says the suspected vicious terrorist is a commander and member of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra and its militia arm, Eastern Security Network. Mr. Abatam explains that he confessed to being behind the killing of 2 INEC members of staff at Ihite, Uboma local government area of Imo State in April this year, and also led the operation that led to the killing of Ahmed Gulak in May 2021, among other high-level crimes. And that's all from Abuja. It's back now to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Markwe. We continue in Imo State, and this is the governor, Senator Hope Uzodimma, who has confirmed the death of Professor George Obiozor, the President General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo. A statement signed by the governor says the renowned academic, diplomat, statesman passed on recently after a brief illness. He was aged 80. According to the governor, the death of this foremost Igbo leader and former Nigerian ambassador to the United States and the State of Israel is a big loss to Imo State, the Southeast, and the entire country. He said, quote, "I have no doubts that both Nigeria and the international community will miss his profound intellectual contributions and wise counsel on national and global issues." Time now for business news. Here's Jeffrey Lozano.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Hello and welcome to Business. The Senate has asked the central bank to extend the deadline for the use of the old Naira notes from January 31st to June the 30th next year. The recommendation by the upper legislative chamber of the National Assembly follows a motion raised by Senator Alain Dume that January the 31st deadline for the phasing out of the old notes is too close. He argued that due to the limited number of banks in certain parts of the country, many individuals will not be able to lodge the old note in time to meet the deadline. The central bank had on November the 23rd launched a redesigned Naira note as legal tender, while its issuance by commercial banks commenced on December the 15th, 2022. Meanwhile, the accumulated debt from unstructured supplementary services data USSD owed to telecom companies may lead to withdrawal of USSD services. The president of the Association of Telecom Companies of Nigeria said the amount climbed to 80 billion naira as of November this year and is asking for a quick intervention by all stakeholders. From there, more than 125 billion naira is gained by investors at the domestic stock market as they resume from the Christmas break with bargain hunting for some high value stocks on the NGX. Willie Bong tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report, a fantastic way to reopen after the Christmas holidays. And it's with a bang, 0.46% up, better than what we had on Friday, which was 0.42%, and with 126 billion naira added to the market value. Now, the banking sector did boost the performance today. It was up 1.38%. Consumer goods added to that, and analysts that I spoke to earlier did say that the banking sector will be the toast of investors ahead of the Q4 earnings. Now, big moves as expected in Geregu. It's after the news of Akpexim's plan to acquire a strategic minority stake in the power company. Share price appreciated by 9.96%. to close at 127 naira. It added 11 naira 50 kobo to its share price today. Now let's see the stocks that lost in today's trading session. Alti Briscoe lost 7.41% to close at 25 kobo, followed by Chams and McNichols. The bull run is still on, and investors don't appear to want to watch from the sidelines anytime soon. And that's the stock market report. And Will Ibang is back to you.
Thanks, Will. And let's find out how major markets in other parts of the world ended midweek trading session. And that's it on business news. I'm Jeffrey Uzong. It's back to you, Millicent, for the rest of the news at 10.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Coming up next, U.S. considers imposing new COVID restrictions on Chinese arrivals after Beijing announced it would reopen its borders next month. International news. The U.S. says it is considering new COVID restrictions for travelers coming from China following Beijing's announcement about reopening its borders in January. The new rules would include testing on arrival and additional tracking. Officials say the U.S. and other countries are concerned China may not be transparently reporting COVID data specifically. Well, Sama Pusi has more on Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US is considering imposing new COVID restrictions on Chinese arrivals after Beijing announced it would reopen its borders next month. American officials say this is due to a lack of transparency surrounding the virus in China as cases surge. Japan, Malaysia and Taiwan, worried at importing COVID cases, have already outlined tighter measures for Chinese travellers, including negative tests. Beijing has said COVID rules should be brought in on a scientific basis. Meanwhile, Hong Kong is dropping almost all its COVID regulations this week, following a similar move by mainland China. From Thursday, people arriving in the city will no longer have to do a mandatory PCR test. The vaccine pass system will also be scrapped, but compulsory masks in public places will continue. It is a dramatic move by the city, which once had some of the toughest restrictions in the world. The CEO of Southwest Airlines has said he is truly sorry for flight disruptions. Bob Jordan said the airline would continue to operate a reduced schedule and hope to be back on track next week. Thousands of Southwest flights have been cancelled as the low-cost carrier struggled to recover from harsh winter weather that has wrecked holiday plans for many. An Arctic blast and a massive winter storm dubbed Elliott swept over much of the United States in the lead-up to the Christmas holiday weekend, forcing Southwest to scrap more than 12,000 flights since Friday.
I want everyone who is dealing with the problems we've been facing, whether you haven't been able to get to where you need to go, or you're one of our heroic employees caught up in a massive effort to stabilize the airline, to know is that we're doing everything we can to return to a normal operation. And please also hear that I'm truly sorry. Here's why this giant puzzle is taking us several days to solve. Southwest is the largest carrier in the country, not only because of our value and our values, but because we build our flight schedule around communities, not hubs. With our large fleet of airplanes and flight crews out of position in dozens of locations, and after days of trying to operate as much of our full schedule across the busy holiday weekend, we reached a decision point to significantly reduce our flying to catch up.
Pope Francis has said former Pope Benedict XVI is very ill and he has asked his pilgrims at the Vatican to pray for him. Benedict became the first leader of the Catholic Church to stand down in 600 years in 2013, citing advanced age. At the end of the Pope's final audience of the year, he asked people to pray a special prayer for Pope Emeritus Benedict. The Vatican then said the 95-year-old ex-Pope's health had worsened in recent hours.
Well, the fact that the Pope mentioned the situation of the Pope Benedict this morning in the audience is a sign that it is we are in a very serious situation. It's the very first time that the Pope Francis talked about the Pope Benedict like that, using this word, saying that he is very ill. So we can take it as a very serious alert concerning his situation, in his health situation in particular.
Kosovo has closed its biggest border crossing with Serbia after protesters blocked it on the Serbian side. Here, drone footage of another roadblock in Serbia. Since December the 10th, Kosovo Serbs in the northern part of the country have exchanged fire with police and erected more than 10 roadblocks in and around Mitrovica. Tensions between Belgrade and Pristina have been running high since last month, when representatives of ethnic Serbs in the north of Kosovo left state institutions, including the police and judiciary, over the Kosovo government's decision to replace Serbian-issued car license plates. Huge plumes of smoke have been seen rising from a blaze at the Carden refinery in Venezuela. A video posted on the internet showed the extent of the fire. Sources at the facility said there were no injuries and operations at the refinery continued as normal. An investigation has started into the cause. And an Iranian chess player has taken part in an international tournament in Kazakhstan without a hijab for the second day. Sara Kadem is taking part in the World Rapid and Blitz Chess Championships in Almaty in Kazakhstan. Iran has been swept by demonstrations after a 22-year-old woman died in the custody of morality police who detained her for inappropriate attire. Laws enforcing mandatory hijabs have become a flashpoint during the protests, with a string of sportswomen competing overseas appearing without their headscarves in public. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. The wait for the commencement of a new Nigeria Professional Football League is final, over following the conduct of the draw for the new season abridged league in Abuja earlier today. Well, 20 NPFL teams were drawn to 2 different groups for the purpose of the abridged league season, already approved there by the NFF. Well, in Group A, we have Kwara United, Nasarawa United, Gombe United, El Kanemi Warriors, with 6 other teams completing the group. And in Group B, we have the likes of Niger Tornadoes, Doma United, Wiki Tourist, and the 6 other teams, and you can see there on the screen. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Interim Management Committee of the NPFL, Benga Elegbeleye, says that the organizers have secured a sponsor to foot the indemnities of match officials for the next 3 years, with the payments to be done directly from the company to the appointed match officials. The IMC has also announced that 100% of the winner's prize for the season. The 2022-2023 NPFL champions will be carting home a 100 million naira prize. An Australian Open tournament director, Craig Tarley, says he has a great deal of confidence in the Australian public that Novak Djokovic will be welcomed back to the country nearly a year after the Serb was deported from Australia for not being vaccinated against COVID-19. Djokovic arrived in Australia on Tuesday ahead of his bid for a 10th men's singles title at next month's Australian Open. And that's Sports News. I'm Ayotunde Balu.
And as we end this news bulletin, it is to celebrate an icon of integrity, Dr. Christopher Kolade, who is 90 years old today. Dr. Kolade has reached the zenith of professions like broadcasting, manufacturing, and diplomacy. Born in Erioke in Oriade local government of Osun State, December the 28th, 1932, Dr. Kolade, who attended Forabe College, University of Sierra Leone, was at different times the Director General of the Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation, Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Cadbury Nigeria PLC, as well as Nigeria's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Described as the personification of integrity and honor, Dr. Kolade, who was given the national honor of the Commander of the Order of the Niger, CON, in the year 2000, remains active as either a board member or chair of a number of blue-chip companies, as well as educational institutions. We join many of his admirers in wishing him a happy 90th birthday as he joins the club of nonagenarians. Happy birthday, sir. And the main news again. There was tension in the upper legislative chamber today during the debate on ways and means advances as both the Senate and House of Representatives passed 21.8 trillion naira 2023 budget. The lawmakers raised estimates by 1.3 trillion naira. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.